Hi everyone, welcome to another Stitches and Scribbles tutorial. By the time you guys are seeing this, it will be December already, which means it's time to start all of that holiday knitting. But for me it's June. I'm pre-filming a bunch of these videos so that I don't have to do all 25 of my Craftmas videos in December because that would be a nightmare and I have other stuff to do. So we're starting in June so that I can get them done in time. Today we're going to be knitting a Santa hat. I am using Lion Brand homespun yarn. This is yarn that I caked up. It's leftovers from previous Santa hats that I've made in the past. Usually the ratio I end up going with, because I tend to make a couple of these every year, if you get 1 skein of white and 2 skeins of red, that should be enough to make 3 or 4 hats. So I think this is my leftover half of that amount from last year. So I'm going to be starting with my white to make the brim of the hat. Today I'm using double pointed needles and they are in size 6.5 millimeters and my set came in 5. I'm only going to use 4, so I'm going to get one out of the way. You're going to start with your white yarn and you're going to cast on 20 stitches to 3 of your needles. So I'm going to start with my slip knot. I'm going to cast on 20. So the first one, the slip knot counts as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So that's my first needle. This looks really short, but it does tend to kind of bulk up a little bit once you get going. Plus we're going to be starting with a rib stitch, so it will be kind of stretchy. If you've never used double pointed needles before, the way I find easiest to hold while I cast on the next one is to kind of hold 2 of them in one hand with enough sticking out to cast on my stitches. So we're going to do 20 again. Pull out some yarn there. Go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, scrunch them down, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Pick up your third needle and we're going to do another 20 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So then you have all 60 stitches on your needles and it should look like that. So the really important thing to keep in mind when you are setting up your 3 needles, make sure that your stitches are all facing the same way. So you can see that because of the cast on method I used, I kind of have that ridge along the bottom. So when I start getting ready to knit, I just make sure that the ridge is on the bottom of all 3 of my needles. Now we're going to start our first row. And I'm actually going to move my yarn basket to the other side because that's the direction I'm pulling from. Our first set of rows for the Santa hat is just going to be a simple knit 1, purl 1 ribbing. We're going to do that for double the length of whatever you want your brim to be because when you're done you fold it over. So I'll show that knit and purl stitch. So I've inserted my fourth needle into the first stitch of the first needle that I cast onto. So it should be right where my tail is in order to make that circle. So I'm going to do a knit stitch, move your yarn to the front, and do a purl stitch. So move your yarn to the back, do a knit stitch, move yarn to the front, and purl. Yarn to the back and knit, yarn to the front, purl, yarn to the back, and knit, yarn to the front, purl, yarn to the back, knit, yarn to the front, purl, yarn to the back, knit, yarn to the front, purl, yarn to the back, knit, yarn to front, purl, yarn to back, knit, yarn to front, purl, yarn to back, knit, yarn to front, purl, yarn to back, knit, yarn to front, and purl. So now you've moved all of your stitches off of one of your original needles and onto the one that you were using to complete the work on. You're going to do the same thing on your other two needles to complete your first row. So I'll go ahead and show you that so that you can follow along. So we're going to knit, move yarn to the front, purl, move yarn to the back, and knit, move yarn to the front, and purl, yarn to back, knit, yarn to front, 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 purl, yarn to back, knit, oops, knit, yarn to front, purl, oh, lawnmower, knit, and purl. I really apologize about the sound, but we're just gonna keep going because I'm not starting over again. Now you've got 2 of your 3 on there, and you're gonna go ahead and do the last one the same way as we did the first 2. Alright, once you have finished your first row all the way around, it should look something like this. So it's a little bit hard to see those knit and purl stitches on the puffy yarn, but it'll create more volume and that ribbing shape for the bottom of the hat. So you're gonna go ahead and do this rib stitch in white for twice the length of what you want the brim to be. So if you want the brim of your hat to be like 3 or 4 inches, you want to knit for like 6 to 8 inches. The reason for this is because we're going to fold the ribbing over and sew it in place so that it gets even extra puffy to look like the fur that would be at the bottom of a normal Santa hat. So go ahead and knit those 6 to 8 inches of your white, and then we'll move on to the next step and switch to red. So I have finished my, I think I did about 6.5, 7 inches of ribbing in the white to make the brim. And again, if this looks really long, we are going to fold it in half at the end to double it up. So I have already tied on my red yarn, and we're going to start by just doing knit stitch all the way around for the first row. As you transition into the red, all of your needles should start to look like that. So go ahead and do knit stitch all the way around your first row. Once you have your first row done, we're now going to start our decrease row. So the way the rest of the pattern is going to work is even numbered rows with the red are just going to be knit all the way around, and odd numbered rows you're going to decrease by doing a knit two together on the first two stitches of every needle. So to start my decrease row, instead of just inserting in one stitch to knit, I'm going to insert into two and knit them together and just knit the rest of the needle normally. And we're going to do the same thing on the other two needles for this row. So again, on those first two stitches, we're going to knit two together and then continue the rest of the row normally. And one more time at the beginning of the needle, knit two together, and knit the rest of the row. So again, to continue with the pattern, every even numbered row you're just going to knit all the stitches all the way around, and every odd numbered row you're going to do the knit two together at the beginning of each needle. So you should be decreasing by 3 stitches every other row. Alright, as I was working on the Santa hat, I just wanted to kind of show you guys a progress update so you can see that as I'm going up the length of the hat, it is decreasing on the sides, and I am doing decrease rows every other row. If you wanted a kind of longer Santa hat, you could do every third row to do the decreases. It's really up to you. I find that I don't like it when they are super long because then it just kind of gets in the way, and I also think it looks funny with a jacket with a hood if the hat is really long. I don't know, maybe that's just me, but this is what the decreases are starting to look like as we go. I did use up probably more than half of my white yarn. I actually recaked it into a little teeny one, and I'm working on my first skein of red, so just keep going with those rows of increases, or not increases, those rows of decreases every other row or every third row if you want to do it differently, and I will see you when we have one stitch left on each needle. So make sure you stop when there's one left on each. Alright, so I am down to my very last 3 stitches to finish off the hat. Usually when I do Santa hats like this, because it ends with so few stitches, I don't even bother with casting off. So I'm just going to cut my string and pull out a crochet hook, but you could also use a yarn needle for this. It doesn't have to be a crochet hook. And I just pull the tail through all 3 of my remaining stitches. One more. Okay. Once it's through all 3, I don't pull it through the final one all the way, but then I do a single chain stitch to kind of knot it off, like so, and then stick the crochet hook inside and pull that tail through so that I can weave it in later. So you should have a shape that looks something like that. The next thing I'm going to do is to create that fold over. So I'm going to go ahead and fold the brim in half, like that, and make sure it's all even and sitting the way you want. And you should have a tail from where you cast on, as well as tails on the inside where you changed colors. So I actually just use that crochet hook or yarn needle again to pull the cast on tail in to the same spot, and then knot those 3 together to hold it in place. You can sew down the length of the brim if you want to keep it a little bit more secure, but I find that for the most part, like, this does what it needs to do. There's going to be white fuzz everywhere when I'm done with this tutorial. So there is the body of the hat. The last thing that you have to do other than weaving in ends is making a pom-pom. If you have a pom-pom maker, go ahead and use that. You could even use a pre-made pom-pom if you want, especially those like really fuzzy, like furry ones that are a big deal right now. But I really like it when my pom-pom matches the material of the brim. I don't like to use something else. I think that might just be me. If you want kind of a more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like traditional look, I've seen Santa hats with tassels on them to have more of the like Father Christmas look instead of the like the modern Santa Claus, so you can do either one. But I'm going to do a pom-pom today. So I wrap around my 4 fingers until I have as much as I want for the pom-pom, and I make mine pretty thick and fluffy, so I'm probably going to go with quite a bit of yarn for this, just so that I get the thickness and fluffiness that I want for the pom-pom. Okay, that looks like enough, so I'm going to cut there. And then before I separate all my pieces, I'm going to lay it down very carefully and cut another pretty long piece of yarn, because this is the one that's going to be connecting our pom-pom together. So I lay that really long piece flat, put my bundle on top, and do a plain old double knot around it. I usually do one going one way, flip it, and then do two on the other side just because it holds it really securely. Like that. And you should have something that looks kind of like a bow tie or a butterfly. Then I split that bundle in between the loops and do another double knot going perpendicular to the one that we tied at the beginning. Like that. And make sure that you keep your really long tails out of the way, because that's also what we're going to use to attach our little pom-pom to the hat. The next thing that I do is cut all of those loops, which usually means like sawing through it with a pair of scissors. I have a better pair of scissors somewhere, but do I know where they are? No. I think my apartment just eats scissors. That's fine, they show up eventually. All the way around. Okay, and then I kind of just fluff it up, and you will get yarn fuzzies that go all over the place when you do this. And I kind of just snip the ends off of any that are really super long and kind of stick them out just to even it out a little bit. But that's not critical. If you like kind of the wild and crazy looking pom-pom, that's fine too. Just make sure that you don't cut those two really long pieces, because that's how we're going to attach it. Once your pom-pom is kind of looking the way you would like it to, take your crochet hook or yarn needle again, stick it through, pull one side in, stick it through again in a slightly different spot, and pull the other side through. Flip the whole thing inside out, and I just tie a little knot on the inside to make sure it's secure. And then you can go ahead and weave in ends however you prefer. So that is our finished Santa hat. It is usually just long enough on me that it slouches over a little bit without being crazy long, like I talked about before. And I love this pattern so much, I end up remaking it for myself probably every 3 or 4 years because I wear them out. This is the only hat that I wear in December because it's nice and festive, but because of the yarn that we used for it, it's a little bit nicer looking than a store-bought Santa hat. So it ends up being the perfect Santa hat pattern for something a little bit special for the holidays. Makes a great white elephant gift, makes a great beginning of the season gift for somebody to kind of get you into the holiday spirit. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you for the next one. Bye!